Does your posture look like this whenever you're at your phone, computer, or just daily life? Traditional posture advice would say just simply pull your shoulders back, tuck your chin, and sit up nice and tall. It works great in theory, but in reality, it's a complete freaking waste of time. I would know because I spent 2.5 years of my life trying to hold my shoulders back to maintain good posture and get out of that forward head, rounded shoulder, extreme kyphosis or upper cross, whatever you want to call it, type positioning. It was back in 2013 when I figured out posture might have been a cause of my shoulder pain. I had seen a local physical therapist. He said, hey man, you get this corrected, your shoulder pain's gonna go away. So I dove in. I looked at every bit of research I possibly could, and everything I found was just saying, hey, pull all this back, keep this nice and upright, and you're good to go. So I obsessed. I worked out in that position. I kept my shoulders back in the shower. Even when I was trying to sleep, I thought about keeping my shoulders down and back because I thought, hey, this is gonna help my shoulder pain, and I'm gonna look really dang good to all the ladies out there. And then 2.5 years later, I go out with a buddy of mine, a roommate of mine, and we walk into a bar, and the first thing he says to me is, hey man, stand up straight. And my entire world just crumbled. And I thought, how in the world is my posture not upright? I've been spending 2.5 years keeping my shoulders back. This doesn't make any sense. Like this should just be a preset. It should be natural, innate, default. And it wasn't. I had social proof. I had my best friend, my roommate at the time, tell me that I wasn't there, that he noticed I was slumped over. And so I had to then completely reshape what I thought about posture and the way we make changes to the body. And it wasn't that just forcing myself in this position was the goal. It wasn't. That keeping my shoulders down and back, yeah, I could consciously do that and it looked pretty good. But whenever I wasn't thinking about it, I just fell right back into my poor posture or poor habits. So I reframed everything. I dove into more literature. I was like, what is actually gonna make an unconscious change to my posture? So that way I can just stand there and have everything in good alignment. And that's really what this entire video is about today. It's about helping you guys figure out how to make a change to your posture without having to consciously control it while you're at your desk and working, or you're out at the grocery store, or whatever it is that you're doing. You're just there. It's completely natural and it feels relaxed. So in the video, we'll describe what this forward head, rounded shoulder posture is, upper cross syndrome if you want to call it that. I'll give you a couple of tests that you need to be running to try to make some improvements to this, which will help kind of describe the theory I'm working from. And then we'll jump into a couple of exercises that have really helped my clients, as well as myself, maintain this natural, upright, default posture without having to really work too hard to get it. So what is upper cross syndrome, rounded shoulders, forward head? I like to describe this as a position where our head is forward and our ear is in front of the shoulder. If this is going forward, 9 times out of 10, that's going to draw and pull our shoulders in with it. You can also see this commonly associated with sway back posture. That sway back posture is when our hips are driving in front of our heel and our shoulders. So our body is basically just trying to maintain balance against gravity. So if I stand, all this goes forward, and so I don't completely fall, what will happen is my hips will go forward and my body will push back on the upper body in order to maintain that balance. And then this is where we get caught up in being in that forward head, rounded shoulder positioning. Now this isn't always the case and everybody's different with their posture and their needs, but this is generally what I see and what I'm going after for people. So we can break up how to intervene on this to make unconscious changes in 2 ways. One, how our body is relating to gravity, and the second is the localized muscle tensions that are holding us in this position against gravity, so that way we don't fall over. So that's where we get into the conversation of, okay, here's where I am against gravity. This is happening, I'm rounded, all this is here. So what muscles will be tight? Well, traditional posture, advice and knowledge isn't wrong about this. Like there is a lot of tension that's happening through the chest. The upper abs are very tight, but so are the glutes, the upper hamstrings. So the goal is just do the opposite. So one way to kind of fight this is just conscious, putting yourself in this position. But when I say conscious, I mean you're noticing where your body is, but you're not forcing yourself there with excessive muscle tension. Shoulders back and down, that's excessive muscle tension. I feel my shoulder blades. I can feel my rhomboids. I can feel those muscles working. It's not the goal here. Instead, all I want you to focus on is just heavy through the heels, pull your hips back behind you, make sure they're in alignment. With just doing this, a lot of times that will bring you out of this forward head posture. You bring those hips behind you and you're gonna be like, why am I staring at the floor now? So it's as simple as just like, well, look up. Heavy through the heels, my hips are back behind me or in alignment. and I'm just looking forward. So that's one way you can sort of combat this. None of that required excessive muscle tension. None of it. So the second way we're gonna go after this rounded shoulders and forward head position is by going after the localized muscle tension that can be presenting or holding you in this posture. So again, if my hips are forward, I'm rounded, all of this is here, well, I could have some excessive tension of the chest, the SCMs, my upper abdominals. We want to relax these muscles. The best way to know that we can relax these muscles that may be locking us in and trying to prevent us from falling over is by doing tests that show that these muscles are letting go, that they're chilling out, they're relaxing. The big ones that I go after are shoulder external rotation, extension, and cervical rotation. Today, all I want you to focus on is your shoulder extension. So this is a very easy test that I want you to do both before you do the exercises and then after them. If this is easier, you can do them with less compensations, then it's probably a good indication that you're stretching some things out. You're opening up your mobility throughout the body, so that way if there is any excessive, say, muscle tension that is kind of holding you in this posture to help you brace against gravity, that you're starting to relax that a bit more. And then your body can find that nice, natural, relaxed default position that we're looking for. So to test shoulder extension, all we're looking for is taking our thumb and pointing it backwards. Notice I rotate this thumb and point it straight behind me. I like to think of it as like, you got an annoying sibling that's right behind you. You're trying to poke them in the eye, right? So it might be a little mean, but it works. So keep that thumb pointed backwards, and then you're just gonna reach back as far as you can, and the goal is about 45 degrees of extension. Things to watch out for are, as you come back, you start to bend that elbow, or you start to come back and that palm starts to face straight backwards. Last thing I will say is forward head and rounded shoulders kicking in, that postural presentation. So a lot of people will do this test, and then you'll see them do this, their head, their ear comes forward. Stop the test when you see that stuff happening. So just go back. This should feel nice and natural as you do it. You can see I get to about 45 degrees without those compensations. So you'll use this as a pre-test to say, hey, is there a limitation that's happening right now? Yes or no. If there is, cool. We have a direction. We have something that we can improve upon that should have an effect on our standing posture. You'll then do these exercises and then retest. If we see an improvement, then down the road, we should hopefully see some improvements in your posture as well. So one of the best ways you can know that you're being objective with this type of posture correction and mobility improvements is with our free 7-day posture and mobility program located down in the description. It gives you a ton of information on how to test for forward head, rounded shoulders, sway back, and anterior pelvic tilt. It'll tell you where your greatest limitations are, and it also gives you an invite to our free Broken Obese group where you can upload your tests, you can ask questions, and get feedback from me directly, as well as others that have been where you are now and have made improvements. Again, that is completely free. Link is down in the description, so I highly, highly suggest you take advantage of that. But now that we know sort of the two paths that we're going to make some improvements to this posture, both from, hey, just being aware of like what our body's doing against gravity, and two, going after the localized tensions that may be holding us here, which are, again, just trying to keep you upright and not fall over against gravity, we can now take this understanding and apply it to the exercises that we have here. So we're gonna go into 3 exercises that are my favorite, best bang for your buck, that really make the biggest changes for both my clients and myself in keeping your shoulders, cervical spine nice and healthy and keep you from getting into that rounded shoulder forward head posture.
This is the iron cross rolling. We'll be using this to loosen up the back, the hips, as well as the chest. This is really good for sway back as well as forward head posture. So you'll start by simply just laying on your back. You're gonna place your palms flat on the ground like you're on a cross. It is very important to keep the palms pressed down throughout this exercise, as well as the legs relatively straight at the knees. So once you have that down, you're simply just going to reach your leg over at about a 45-degree angle, feeling a nice hip and low back stretch, and trying to get the foot to the floor on the opposite side. As I reach the leg over, I want to exhale, and then once I hit that end range, I then inhale to enhance the stretch I'm feeling in the hip back. With that, you should feel a nice chest expansion to open up that area. So the biggest mistakes to watch out for are as you're rolling over, you're not keeping the palm down, and you also let your shoulder or your shoulder blade come up off the floor as you reach the lead to the opposite side. Another mistake is letting the knee bend on the lead that's rolling over to the other side and hitting about 90 degrees of hip flexion. And then lastly, as you roll over, you're really extending your low back, and you'll notice a rib flare occurring. And this will actually make you feel tighter at your low back versus giving you a nice stretch through there. So just watch out for those subtle mistakes, and you will then perform the recommended reps on both sides for this exercise and enjoy the nice stretch. Here is our upper body banded traction exercise. We'll be using this to loosen up the muscles around the shoulder blade, as well as get some thoracic rotation going. So you're going to set up on your side. You want to make sure that you have a band that is relatively strong. So I'm talking at least 45 pounds. Something even a little bit heavier could be beneficial. So you're gonna set that up against some immovable object and then take your hand, loop it through there, so that way you have a pretty good grip. If you're using a lighter band, you probably want to choke up on it. So think, I would probably grab the middle of this band here if it was something lighter than 45 pounds. So I just made sure I'm set up with my knees at about 90 degrees. And then I want that band to pull me forward. It should be pulling me toward that immovable object. Here is just a squat rack, a desk, piece of furniture, something like that can all work just as well. And so once I have that pulling on my shoulder, I'm going to try to resist it. So I don't want to retract the shoulder blade, but I want that band to pull me forward slightly. So that way it's actually pulling me into a passive protraction. So that is the shoulder blade moving forward. Once it's there, I'm going to make sure I don't fall forward. So my chest or my sternum should not be facing the floor, but it should be still facing upright toward where the band is attached. And then I'm going to start repping out some internal and external rotations at the shoulder. So I will exhale on the rotation component. So whenever I'm moving, and then I will inhale when I hit that end range of motion. So as you can see here, I externally rotate, take a deep breath in. I internally rotate, take a deep breath in. Exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. And then I will just simply repeat this while keeping my chest nice and upright. And what you should be feeling is a nice stretch around the shoulder blade as you do this breathing sequencing. The number one thing to watch out for as you do this exercise is letting your shoulder drift up and toward the ear. Be sure to keep the shoulder depressed, but allow that protraction to happen, and that will then allow for that nice stretch to occur. This is our staggered stance lat inhibition or lat stretch. We're using this to stretch the lat out. The additional benefits are also some improved shoulder mobility, neck mobility, and thoracic rotation. So it's pretty easy to set up. You're going to need a squat rack, or you could do this at home with a doorway. And you're simply just going to grab onto some sort of immovable object and assume a staggered stance. Now, the important part about this is that whatever you're grabbing onto, say I'm using here in my right hand, I want to then step back with that same foot. So my right lat is stretching, so I want my right foot backwards. Notice how when I do this, I'm making myself long. I even have a slight flexion through my back just to stretch that lat out as much as possible. And I want to think about my bottom, my right back pocket going back and down to the floor. What I don't want to do is jam my chest and head down past my arm. This isn't about jamming your arm as far back as possible. It's about making it as long as possible. So as long as you have that down, you can then add a little extra rotation to this. So I'll take my left hand here, put it on the outside of my right knee, and I'll do some little twists and turns just to get a little extra stretch out of it. And then I'm simply just going to complete 5 big deep breaths. I'll let that breath stretch everything out that much more in this stretch. So knock this out and enjoy the new shoulder and neck mobility.